Ladies and gentlemen, there's a question that lingers in the minds of many women. Why do some men leave and never look back, while others always find their way back to a particular woman? It's not luck. It's not manipulation. It's not some game of strategy. It's a deep psychological force rooted in respect, emotional attraction, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. If you act like this, men will always return to you, not because you begged for their attention, but because they recognize something in you that is rare. The world will tell you to chase, to prove your worth, to mold yourself into whatever will please a man, but the truth is, the more you chase, the more you diminish your own value. The most magnetic women, the ones men find themselves thinking about long after they've walked away, are not the ones who cling, but the ones who stand firm in their own identity. They embody self-respect. They master emotional stability. They create an environment where a man feels both challenged and secure. And here is the reality: men do not return to women who make them comfortable. They return to women who make them better. Women who refuse to tolerate mediocrity. Women who know their own worth and are willing to walk away rather than compromise it. If you are constantly anxious about losing someone, you have already lost them. But if you cultivate the mindset of someone who chooses rather than begs, you will become unforgettable. A man's attachment to a woman is not merely a product of desire, nor is it solely dictated by circumstance. It is rooted in something far deeper, an unconscious psychological bond that forms when a woman embodies a set of qualities that speak to the core of a man's nature. This is not about appearances, nor is it about tactics or manipulation. It is about understanding what compels a man on a fundamental level to stay connected, to feel drawn back, even when life pulls him in other directions. The women who hold this power are not those who chase, plead, or bend themselves to fit someone else's mold. No, they are the ones who, through their very presence, command a kind of respect that cannot be ignored. At the core of male attachment lies the concept of stability. Not stagnation, not predictability, but a form of emotional and psychological stability that provides both grounding and challenge. Men live in a world of relentless competition. They battle expectations, struggle to assert themselves, and strive to prove their worth in a society that often seems indifferent to their efforts. Amidst this storm, the presence of a woman who remains composed, who does not waver with every passing emotional whim, becomes invaluable. It holds true when a woman is self-sufficient, when she does not need constant validation, when she possesses a life so full and meaningful that she does not collapse in the absence of a man. She becomes someone he cannot easily forget. This is because men do not want to bear the weight of another person's entire sense of self. It is too much, and it breeds resentment. The more a woman clings, the more she suffocates the very attraction she is trying to maintain. But when she stands firm, when she moves through life with purpose independent of whether a man is beside her or not, she becomes magnetic. And this is the essence of why men return to certain women. Not because these women begged them to stay, not because they convinced them, not because they played a game of seduction, but because they embodied something that is exceedingly rare. They became a source of deep emotional and intellectual engagement. They presented a challenge not in the sense of playing hard to get, but in the sense that they were not easily won over by empty words or temporary affections. They set standards, they demanded a level of integrity, and in doing so, they forced the men in their lives to rise to that level. And if a man walked away, they let him. This is crucial. They let him walk away. And this is where so many struggle, because the fear of loss compels them to act against their own self-respect. But here is the thing: if a man can leave and never look back, then he was never yours to begin with. And more importantly, he was never worthy of you. The women who understand this do not degrade themselves trying to keep someone who does not recognize their value. They do not beg, they do not chase, and they do not compromise their own dignity. Instead, they focus on becoming so formidable, so undeniably complete within themselves that men cannot help but feel the gravity of their presence. It is also worth noting that men are deeply influenced by a woman's emotional state. If she is erratic, if she is constantly in distress, if she is consumed by insecurity, he will begin to associate her presence with turmoil. But if she is calm, if she is grounded, if she can navigate adversity without becoming lost in it, she will be a source of refuge. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected by pain. It means mastering the ability to regulate emotions in a way that commands respect rather than pity. A woman who can face hardship with grace does not merely attract men, she inspires them. And so, if you want to know why men return to certain women, it is not because these women possessed some secret formula. It is because they refuse to be anything less than their fullest, most authentic selves. They refuse to let fear dictate their actions. They refuse to lower their standards just to avoid loneliness. And because of that, men saw them not as an option, but as a necessity. This is not about manipulating a man's emotions. It is about embodying a mindset that ensures you are never disposable. It is about becoming someone whose presence is so impactful that even in absence, you remain unforgettable. If you act like this, men will always return not because you forced them to, but because they cannot help but recognize what they would be losing. There is something remarkable about a woman who understands her own worth, not in a superficial sense, not in the way that pop culture so often tries to frame it, but in the way that is deeply ingrained in her character. A woman who truly understands her value does not demand respect. She simply operates in a way that commands it. And this, more than anything else, is what separates those who are forgotten from those who remain etched in the minds of the men they encounter. Because at the core of every man's psyche, beneath all the bravado and the social conditioning, is the innate pull towards something stable, something inspiring, something irreplaceable. It is a grave mistake to believe that physical beauty alone will make a man stay. Youth fades, appearances change, and the thrill of infatuation is fleeting. What remains what truly endureases a woman's presence? The energy she carries, the way she navigates the world. When a woman is not forceful, it is quiet, unshakable, and utterly compelling. Men do not always know how to articulate this, but they feel it. They recognize it on an instinctual level, and more importantly, they return to it. Because in a world that is increasingly chaotic, where people are lost in a sea of distractions and temporary pleasures, stability becomes rare, depth becomes rare. And when a man encounters a woman who possesses these things, he knows heaven if he walks away. Even if circumstances pull him in another direction, will never truly find another like her. But the problem, of course, is that too many women do not believe in their own power. They have been conditioned to think that they must chase, that they must prove their worth, that they must mold themselves to fit into whatever shape a man desires. And in doing so, they strip themselves of the very thing that would make them unforgettable. Because men do not return to women who made themselves small for them. They return to the women who stood firm, who maintained their dignity, who refused to be treated as an afterthought. This is not to say that a woman should be cold or unapproachable. Quite the opposite. The most powerful women are those who balance warmth with strength. They are compassionate, but they do not allow themselves to be taken for granted. They are kind, but they are not naive. They love deeply, but they do not tolerate disrespect. And in this balance, in this ability to hold space for both vulnerability and self-respect, they become a force that cannot be ignored. Men are drawn to women who make them better, not through criticism, not through nagging, but simply by existing in a way that challenges them to rise. A man cannot help but respect a woman who holds herself to high standards, who does not settle for mediocrity, who does not allow herself to be mistreated. And this respect, once earned, creates a bond that is difficult to sever. The mistake that so many people make is believing that love alone is enough to keep someone. But love, in its rawest form, is not always enough. There must be admiration. There must be respect. There must be an element of mystery, not in the sense of playing games, but in the sense that a woman has her own life, her own ambitions, her own sense of fulfillment that exists beyond a man's presence. It is an unfortunate reality that desperation repels, while confidence attracts. A woman who clings too tightly, who fears loss so deeply that she will do anything to prevent it, creates the very outcome she dreads. Because men, whether they realize it or not, are repelled by neediness, not because they do not want to be wanted, but because they do not want to be responsible for someone else's entire emotional well-being. It is too much weight to carry, and it creates a dynamic that is unhealthy for both people involved. But when a woman is whole within herself, when she can love without losing herself, when she can give without sacrificing her own needs, she creates a dynamic that is entirely different. She becomes someone a man does not just want, but deeply respects. And this respect is the foundation upon which real, lasting attraction is built. It is a difficult lesson to accept, but it is true. The more you chase, the more someone runs. The more you fear losing someone, the more you unconsciously push them away. But when you stand in your own power, when you recognize that your worth is not tied to whether or not a man chooses you, you become a presence that lingers. And so if you want to understand why men return to certain women, it is not because these women were the most accommodating, the most agreeable, or the most self-sacrificing. It is because they were whole. They did not need to beg for love because they understood that real love is given freely, not extracted through effort. They did not compromise their self-respect for the sake of keeping someone who was unsure about them, and because of that, they became unforgettable. The irony is that the women who fear abandonment the most are often the ones who experience it, while the women who are secure enough to let go if necessary are the ones who remain in men's minds for years, sometimes even a lifetime. Because in a world full of fleeting attachments and disposable connections, true strength and self-worth are rare, and rarity is always valuable. A woman who commands deep respect and admiration from a man does not achieve this by accident. It is not a matter of mere luck or surface-level attractiveness. It is not something that can be fabricated through manipulation or short-term tactics. It is the result of an internal foundation that is built over time, through self-awareness, through discipline, through an unwavering commitment to personal integrity. And when a woman possesses these qualities, she becomes not just desirable, but irreplaceable. Because there is a fundamental truth that people often overlook. Men may be drawn to many, but they return only to a few. And those few are the ones who offer something rare, something that is not easily found elsewhere. At the core of this dynamic is a woman's ability to remain centered in her own life. Too often, people mistakenly believe that being in a relationship means losing oneself in the other person, that love is about merging into a single identity, abandoning one's own needs, one's own ambitions, one's own sense of self. But this is a catastrophic mistake, because the moment a woman gives up her individuality for the sake of keeping a man, she loses the very thing that made her captivating in the first place. The irony is that the women who make their entire world revolve around a man often end up being the ones who are left behind. Not because they are not loving enough, not because they do not care enough, but because they fail to maintain the essence of what made them unique. Men do not stay where they are needed. They stay where they are inspired. This is a difficult truth to accept, but it is one that cannot be ignored. When a woman becomes overly dependent on a man for her sense of happiness, for her sense of validation, for her sense of purpose, she places an unbearable burden on the relationship. And this burden, whether consciously or unconsciously, creates resentment. because no man wants to feel as though he is responsible for another person's entire emotional well-being. It is too much weight to carry, and when a woman allows herself to fall into this dynamic, she unknowingly sabotages her own position. The women that men return to time and time again are those who never abandoned themselves in the process of loving another. They did not make the mistake of assuming that their value was tied to whether or not a man chose them. They did not shrink themselves out of fear of rejection. They did not lower their standards in desperation. Instead, they maintained a quiet, unwavering confidence. They understood that their presence was a privilege, not something to be taken for granted, and in doing so, they created a lasting impact. There is a certain energy that a truly self-assured woman exudes, an energy that is deeply compelling, an energy that is impossible to ignore. She does not seek to control or manipulate, nor does she beg for attention or validation. She simply exists in a way that makes it clear that she knows exactly who she is. And this certainty, this unwavering self-possession, is something that draws people in. Because in a world full of insecurity, where so many people are searching for external validation, true confidence stands out like a beacon. A woman who understands this does not chase. She does not feel the need to prove her worth through excessive effort. She does not tolerate half-hearted affection or inconsistency. She knows that if a man truly values her, he will make it known, and if he does not, she will not waste her time trying to convince him otherwise. This is not arrogance, it is self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of all lasting attraction. Men are drawn to women who have boundaries, who are kind, but not willing to be taken advantage of, who are giving, but not to the point of self-sacrifice, who are loving, but not at the expense of their own dignity. There is nothing attractive about a woman who is willing to accept poor treatment simply because she fears losing someone. In fact, this fear often has the opposite effect, because desperation repels, while self-respect attracts. The greatest mistake a woman can make is believing that she must fight to keep a man's attention. If a man is truly meant for her, she will not have to fight for him. He will recognize her value. He will appreciate her presence. He will return not because she begged him to, not because she manipulated him into doing so, but because he cannot help it. Because he understands, even if only on a subconscious level, that what she offers is something rare. This is what sets apart the women who are forgotten from the women who are remembered. It is not about how much effort they put into trying to keep a man interested. It is about the level of self-worth they embody. The moment a woman realizes that she does not need to convince someone to stay, she steps into a position of power. She becomes the kind of woman that people do not easily walk away from, because they know that once they do, they may never find someone like her again. And so, the lesson here is simple yet profound. Do not chase. Do not compromise yourself in an attempt to be what someone else wants. Do not trade your self-respect for temporary validation. Instead, become the kind of woman who is so certain of her own worth that people cannot help but be drawn to her. Because at the end of the day, it is not the woman who gives the most or sacrifices the most who wins. It is the woman who understands that she is the prize. And when you truly believe that, the right people will always return to you, not because you demanded it, but because they knew deep down that losing you was never an option. A woman who truly understands her worth does not place her value in the hands of others. She does not seek approval from those who do not appreciate her, nor does she chase after those who fail to recognize what she brings to the table. There is a profound strength in a woman who stands firm in her identity, who does not waver in the face of rejection, who refuses to beg for attention. This is not arrogance, it is self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It draws people in because it is rare, because it signifies a level of inner security that most people lack. A woman like this does not fear losing a man because she knows that the right man will never put her in a position where she has to question her place in his life. There is an undeniable difference between a woman who operates from a place of neediness and one who operates from a place of abundance. The first is desperate for validation, constantly seeking reassurance, willing to compromise her own needs just to keep a man around. The second understands that her presence is a privilege, that she does not need to prove her worth because it is already evident in the way she carries herself. And men, whether they admit it or not, can sense this difference almost immediately. They are drawn to confidence, to independence, to a woman who does not make them the center of her universe, but instead invites them into a life that is already full. Many women make the mistake of thinking that love is about sacrifice, that in order to keep a relationship, they must give endlessly, tolerate mistreatment, lower their standards. But this is a misunderstanding of what true love is. Real love does not require a person to abandon themselves. It does not ask someone to stay in a situation where they are not valued. A strong woman does not stay where she is merely tolerated. She goes where she is truly cherished. She understands that love is a two-way street, that she deserves the same level of commitment and effort that she is willing to give. There is something undeniably powerful about a woman who is not easily swayed, who does not allow herself to be manipulated, who does not crumble at the slightest hint of disapproval. She understands that not everyone will like her, and she is at peace with that. She knows that setting boundaries may push some people away, but she would rather lose those who do not respect her limits than betray herself in order to keep them around. A woman like this commands respect not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. Men are not drawn to women who tolerate being treated as an afterthought. They do not return to women who allow themselves to be walked over. They return to the ones who made them feel something deeper than just desired, the ones who challenged them, who inspired them, who refused to accept less than they deserved. A woman who holds herself to a high standard will attract a man who rises to meet it. A woman who lowers her standards out of fear of being alone will attract a man who takes advantage of that fear. A woman who is deeply rooted in her sense of self does not panic when a man pulls away. She does not rush to fix things, to prove her worth, to beg for his attention. She understands that if a man is meant for her, he will recognize her value without needing to be convinced, and if he does not, she knows that she is better off without him. This is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that love should never come at the expense of self-respect. It is easy to mistake emotional attachment for love. It is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that just because you want someone, just because you have shared memories and deep feelings, it means they are the right person for you. But true compatibility is not just about feelings, it is about alignment. It is about two people who share the same values, the same vision, the same level of commitment. And when a woman understands this, she stops trying to force relationships that are not meant to last. She stops clinging to situations that drain her energy and self-worth. She learns to let go of what is not serving her so that she can make room for something better. A woman who respects herself knows the difference between patience and self-betrayal. She understands that waiting for a man to change, to grow, to finally see her worth is often a losing battle, because a man who truly values her will not put her in a position where she has to question his intentions. He will not make her feel uncertain. He will not play games. He will not treat her as an option. And if she finds herself constantly wondering where she stands, she knows that the answer is already clear. She is standing in a place that she should walk away from. The moment a woman stops seeking external validation and starts focusing on building a fulfilling life for herself, everything changes. She no longer settles for half-hearted effort. She no longer tolerates relationships that make her feel small. She becomes the kind of woman that people do not easily forget, the kind that men regret losing, the kind that is remembered not just for her beauty, but for her strength, her presence, her unwavering sense of self. Because at the end of the day, it is not the woman who gives the most, who sacrifices the most, who pleases the most, who wins. It is the woman who knows her worth. It is the woman who refuses to accept less than she deserves. It is the woman who understands that real love does not require her to shrink herself, to beg, to prove. The right man will see her value without needing to be reminded. And when she truly believes that, she will never have to chase, because the right people will always return to where they are valued. A woman who understands her value does not measure her worth by how much she can endure or by how well she can please others at her own expense. She does not engage in self-sacrifice as a means to earn love, nor does she stay in places where she is not respected. Strength in a woman is not about how much she can tolerate, but rather how firm she stands in her own identity. And when she fully comprehends that, she will never have to beg for attention, chase after someone who has already shown her their indifference, or fight to keep someone in her life who does not recognize her worth. Men return to women who make them feel something beyond fleeting desire. They come back to those who have left an imprint, not just on their hearts, but on their minds, their souls, their entire perception of what a relationship could be. And the truth is, this is not about manipulation, about trying to play some psychological game to keep a man attached. It's about embodying something that is rare in the world, a person who genuinely respects themselves. A woman who commands the return of a man does not do so because she is desperate for him, but because she has become the kind of person that he realizes he cannot replace. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is assuming that emotional intensity equals deep connection. But attachment does not always mean love. Feeling deeply for someone does not mean that the relationship is healthy or that it is meant to last. Often people become attached to what is familiar, even when it is harmful. They confuse their longing with proof that the relationship has depth, when in reality it is just a sign that they are entangled in something that is draining them rather than fulfilling them. But a woman who understands her own power does not fall into this trap. She does not let her emotions dictate her standards. She does not let loneliness convince her to settle. A woman who men return to is a woman who does not need them to return. That is the paradox. She does not sit around waiting, wondering, hoping that they will change their minds. She moves forward. She continues to grow, to evolve, to become even more of the person she is meant to be. And in doing so, she naturally creates the kind of life that others want to be a part of. She does not attempt to make a man stay by diminishing herself. She makes it clear that her life is full, and if he is wise, he will want to be a part of it. There is a significant difference between being wanted and being valued. Many women settle for being wanted because it provides temporary validation. It feels good to be desired, to be pursued, to know that someone is thinking about them. But being wanted does not mean being cherished. It does not mean being prioritized, being deeply respected, being someone's choice rather than their convenience. And once a woman understands this difference, she stops settling for surface-level attention. She stops mistaking a man's fleeting interest for true commitment. A woman who carries herself with dignity, with certainty, with an unshakable sense of self is not easily forgotten. She is not easily discarded. She does not blend into the background of a man's past relationships, lost among the many faces that came before and after. She stands out because she is not dependent on his approval, because she did not mold herself to fit his expectations, did not abandon herself in an attempt to make him stay. She remains in his mind because she was whole before him and remained whole after him. The truth is, people respect what they cannot easily have. That is not to say that love should be based on playing hard to get, but rather that human nature is drawn to things that require effort, to things that are rare, to things that do not simply give themselves away without a standard. And a woman who understands this does not overgive in an attempt to secure love. She gives because she chooses to, but she does not allow her kindness to be taken for granted. She is generous, but she is not naive. Men do not leave women like this easily because they know deep down that they may never encounter another like her. They may try to move on, to convince themselves that the grass is greener elsewhere, that someone else will make them feel just as fulfilled, just as challenged, just as alive. But time reveals the truth. And the truth is that a woman who truly knows her worth, who does not compromise on her standards, who remains true to herself no matter the circumstances, is a rarity. And people regret losing what is rare. This is not about arrogance. It is not about playing games or about trying to make a man feel like he is in competition for your attention. It is about authenticity, about standing so firmly in your truth that you become someone who naturally commands respect, admiration, and devotion. Because love should never be about convincing someone to stay. It should be about two people recognizing each other's value and choosing each other, not out of fear or desperation, but out of genuine appreciation. And that is the key. A woman who understands this does not fear loss. She does not cling to what is slipping away. She does not chase after what is unsure. She knows that what is truly meant for her will always find a way to remain. And so she moves with confidence, knowing that her worth does not decrease when someone fails to see it. She remains steady in her own power, and in doing so, she ensures that the right people, the ones who truly deserve her, will always return. A woman who understands her worth does not chase, beg, or settle. She does not try to convince anyone of her value because she knows it inherently. Men return to women who stand firm in their identity, who are not easily shaken, who live with purpose and confidence. The key is not in manipulation, but in authenticity, being the kind of person who is respected, cherished, and impossible to forget. When a woman prioritizes her own growth, self-respect, and standards, she naturally attracts those who recognize her rarity. And in the end, those who truly belong in her life will always choose to stay.